Hey, this is the World Advice Channel too. What I want to talk about today is a topic of why do all great nations fail? So for this video, I will explain in a simple and organized way why all the great nations throughout history, you name it, whether it could be Rome, Macedonia, you know, Macedonian Empire, more like Mongols, French Empire, Spanish Empire, all the way to British Empire. Okay, that is the truth of the matter, as well as what can be done to prevent future civilizations like American, so on and so forth, from collapsing. So now I mentioned that, let's get started. So when it comes to answering that question straight up, the simple answer to the question is simply greed. When you look at every empire that has ever existed, especially towards the end of their reign. Literally look up every civilization. We're talking about all the way back to like the times of Babylon, um, ancient Egypt, Nubia, which existed back then, and all the great empires that existed back then, to even more recent ones 2,000 years ago, like ancient Rome, India, China, all the civilizations that existed back then, and that's not even including later on, hundreds of years later, such as you know, French Empire, Spanish Empire, even Mesoamerica, anything pretty much, you name it. Why did every civilization collapse? And one common thing I have actually noticed by looking at all the civilizations of the past and why they collapsed, from being someone who's actually interested in history and has looked up history a lot, is simply down to the fact that every empire pretty much, towards its end, not even pretty much, literally towards its end, had a situation where people could care less about actually maintaining structure in their society and only cared about the money. Okay? In other words, as the term that's become quite popular again, decadence is what destroyed them. Okay? So that's the truth of the matter. Okay? For that matter. Okay? Um, that I have noticed, okay, for that matter, okay? So that is the truth of the matter, okay? Because just look it up yourself, okay? Towards every civilization. Doesn't matter what civilization you can imagine. As long as they were not just straight up directly conquered by another people or something, well, even then, you can see the cracks emerge before that even happened, okay? You always see the same exact trait. The nobles and people in power were greedy. They were not investing their money into projects to keep the nation afloat, all that type of shit. They were doing dumb things like that were stupid, like investing unnecessarily in all these expensive things, not putting the time and effort into actually maintaining their nation, and obviously not supporting the military and everything that pretty much helped build a civilization and keep the civilization functioning. Um, is something that they just simply ignored because all they cared about was their own personal money, especially ancient Rome being a perfect example of that. People will always say ancient Rome fell because of this and fell because of that, but the real reason why it fell, and I will tell you this for a fact, why it fell was because the population, of noblemen who ran it, because Rome was pretty much a council, if anything, and the emperors had power, but not as much as they'd have you believe that they did, So yeah, the councilmen, the powerful nobles of Rome, were towards the end of it just more interested in investing their money in their personal selves, having bigger villas, having more expensive wines, you name it, and not putting enough time and effort into their own population in general as a whole, okay? And that's why ancient Rome collapsed, okay? It's not because of this or because of that. Some people say it's because of all the weird leaders they had, no direct decision, no direct this and that, and all those things did contribute, but mainly just because of greed. It's because of greed directly, okay? Maybe some of those things led up to the greed, but directly it's because of greed and not doing enough for the population. And that's why Rome fell. and not just fell, but fell as hard as it did. In such a sad and um unpoetic way for that matter, okay? Such a depressing way. And you see what happened to the rest of Europe after Rome fell. It turned into chaos, and things that the Romans figured out over 2,000 years ago wouldn't be rediscovered till like the 1800s. That's the impact it had. And that's the truth of the matter. So, in short, to answer your question, for them, and just look it up yourself anyway, for any civilization, it's the same exact story towards the end of it, okay? It's just simply down to greed, whether it's down to noble greed or even the greed of the leaders. It's the same exact story every single time, okay? For that matter, to be quite honest with you, okay? Because the truth of the matter is, if you're a civilization, you're obviously, since us human beings, of course, our biggest superpower compared to every other animal on the planet is intelligence, you obviously have a lot of knowledge and wisdom if you're a civilization that's been around for some time, okay? And even if it's not been around for some time, you obviously have a collection of knowledge that's been developed for a long time prior to your time, okay? So, truth be told, your civilizations, of course, are compiled of anywhere from hundreds to thousands of years of knowledge. If you're doing the right thing, pretty much everything's going to work out the way you want it to, for that matter. But why do they keep on falling? Because they fall because of greed. As I was kind of getting at before, if they're not just straight out directly conquered, um, they just collapse themselves because they're just not well maintained. Okay, so that's the truth of the matter of why they all fall. People might say this, people might say that, but that's mainly the number one reason, and that's the truth of the matter. So now, obviously, the question that comes up is, how can we prevent this from happening? Because even though it's fun to look up all the civilizations that have collapsed, obviously, in this modern day age, especially with technology, and the fact that obviously no one wants to live through a collapse, whether it could be if you live in America, Canada, Britain, whatever you name it, whatever part of the world you can imagine, no one wants to actually experience a collapse. It's cool to watch in movies and stuff, but no one wants to actually be in it. Okay, that's the truth of the matter. So, what can we do to prevent a civilizational collapse? For any of those nations or even all of them combined. Well, the simple answer to that question, as I was saying before, the thing that makes most civilizations collapse is greed, okay? And the best way to deal with greed is there's two solutions. First and foremost, the best one is to have good anti corruption measures. Make sure that you have people who monitor how much money is being embezzled and used and stuff by politicians, as well as making sure that the money that is being um, taken from public funds is actually going to the thing that it's meant to be, that's meant to fund it. And those are things you're supposed to do, okay? There is definitely something that needs to be done with that. There needs to be better methods, more effective methods that are done to keep track of that, okay? That's my first point. The second point, and this one, of course, is going to be the most controversial one, but it's very true too, is that we need to also teach people who are in positions of power how to have better willpower. Because I know this one is going to sound more trivial and idealistic, especially to the more communist type minded people. But in truth, the truth of the matter is, this one is actually very true. You want to actually encourage people to have better willpower, for that matter, okay? Like, because the truth of the matter is, when you really look at it, in the end of the day, you will always benefit more from actually not being corrupt than actually being corrupt. If we look at every civilization that has existed, in the past, the ones that always thrive the most, at least for a period of time, or just in general thrived to the point that they became as big as they did, had people in positions of power who focused more on thinking in a long-term vision instead of just simply spending all that money on wine and and decadence and all that type of stuff. So the simple truth of the matter is, common sense would indicate, you want to teach people, okay, if you focus on doing this and doing this for this period of time, you will eventually get more in the long run, okay? That's what you want to teach them. And you also want to teach them tips and pointers on how to have better self control, okay, for that matter. Now, obviously, it's not going to work on everybody because some people are just shitty people in the first place. But if you can at least try to teach some people, it will at least make sure that it will at least work for some people. Because obviously, just like trying to control yourself when you are eating food or something, obviously being able to resist a temptation of something like being greedy is similar in that sense too. It's a temptation. It's a lust for something. So there obviously is a way to prevent that from getting out of hand too. So in short, if we if we do those two things and focus on those two things, we can prevent our civilization in the modern world from collapsing like ancient ones. So this is my video. I hope you learned something new. And this is all I have to say, and simply put, I'm out. So bye.